Hi everyone, this is Livia Caudell, founder of Conscious Wealth Builders, and I am sitting next to a very extraordinary man. In fact, we were introduced by Raj Sisodia. This is the one and only Simon Mainwaring. Is that how you say your last name?
That is how you say it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
So you're so extraordinary. We actually just got to officially meet a couple days ago.
That's true.
At the Sing Reunion, and you spoke to a group of very successful, highly influential people. And just share with us like who you are on the planet and what you're up to, because you're just so extraordinary.
Oh no, thank you. I am the CEO and founder of a company, a brand consultancy called We First. And we're focused on growth through purpose. So after a 20-year advertising career, like many of us, I was struggling to find meaning in the work that I was doing. And I happened to read the speech that Bill Gates gave at the World Economic Forum, his creative capitalism speech, where he said, government and philanthropy can't fix the world on their own, we want the private sector to get involved. And I took that as a brief. I spent 3.5 years writing this book called We First, and it came out in June of 2011.
Awesome.
And it's called We First, How Brands and Consumers Use Social Media to Build a Better World. It was a New York Times bestseller and voted Best Marketing Book of the Year, and that launched the company. And now we work with startups, high growth companies, and large corporations to really help them define, frame, and scale their purpose through their organization so business can become a force for good.
That is so awesome, and it's so in alignment with Conscious Wealth Builders and what it is that this community is creating, which is empowering people to discover their true authentic purpose and create a business around that. You know, and you've been very successful at that.
Actually, on the face of it, it may appear that I was successful doing that, but here's the challenge. It's really hard to read the label from inside the jar.
Yeah.
Every single one of us, at some point in our lives, whether it's a function of having kids or being over 40, you look at your career and go, why am I doing this? What's the point of it? And even when you reach that moment of kind of inquiry, it's hard to see yourself from outside yourself. And what I discovered, sort of catalyzed by the Bill Gates speech and all these other things, was I had to externalize myself to see myself. I needed to put myself out there so I could observe myself and find out what I cared about. And the way that I did that was by starting to blog and then ultimately writing the book. And the reality was, only by writing the book did I realize what I was writing about.
That is so awesome, because I find myself, even with this whole, summit, I really didn't see the big vision of it until it started unfolding, and it still keeps unfolding. So that's awesome.
You know, we are a work in progress, all of us. And I think for those of you who are sort of still trying to work out your own purpose so that you can manifest that intent as effectively as possible, the real trick is to blog, to journal for 30, 40 days, and don't censor yourself. Just write what you care about. I care about X, and just keep going. And what, oddly enough, is you will notice after 30 days when you look back and you read it, you go, wow, there are certain themes that rose to the top that I wasn't even conscious were that important to me. Because otherwise, in a vacuum, all of this stuff bounces around in your head. You have absolutely no idea. You love kittens, you love the ocean, you love children. It sounds, so silly. And you really need to kind of force yourself to use the discipline to put it down on paper, and then things will reveal themselves.
That's amazing. So speaking to higher purpose, what is your take on how one can really discover their higher purpose? I know you're talking about journaling and but how was it for you and the whole process?
It's interesting. One of the key questions you can ask yourself is, what makes you you? And what I mean by that is, when you're looking for your purpose, the good news is there is absolutely no one else in the world like you. Absolutely, guaranteed. The journey you've been on, where you came from, nurture, nature, the whole thing. So ask yourself, what makes you you, and limit yourself to 3 key attributes. So if you took one of them away, you'd say, oh my God, no, you can't take that one away. My friends, if you took that one away, my friends would say, no, that is who you are. And then you'll start to, when you impose that discipline on yourself, much like you do with a brand where you've got the key attributes of a brand, then you go, wow, I live at the intersection of these 3 key things. And then you ask yourself, well, what am I the only of? So you've asked yourself, what makes you you? And then you ask yourself, what are you the only of on the strength of those three attributes? And then you ask yourself a third question, which is, what is your promise to the world? How will the world be better off because you're in it? What do you want your legacy to be? So if you start with identifying who you are, and then you ask yourself, well, what's unique about that? And then you ask yourself how that uniqueness can manifest itself in the world, you're starting to get a fairly clear through line to what your purpose is that can manifest itself in your business, how you treat your employees, the products you make, how you make them, how you build a community around that, and then how you mobilize that whole community to have a difference, make a difference in the world.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. I love that you talk about the three, because for me, I'm a multi-talented person. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that are. So there's like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. And through that I've kind of done that process myself, looking at what are my strengths?
Right.
What am I really, really good at? And honing in on those.
It's very true. And one of the gifts that all of us as entrepreneurs have is that we're absolutely crazy for doing what we do.
Absolutely.
If anyone ever wonders, I've been around a lot of very, very successful entrepreneurs, from Blake McCarthy at Tom's to Richard Branson at Virgin. We're all nuts. And every single one of us goes through tireless periods where you want to toss it all in and throw it all in.
Yeah.
It's a difficult journey, but it's a really rewarding one. But don't think for a second that you're the only one who struggles on the way through. It really is part of the deal.
Amazing. So there's going to be a lot of viewers that are watching that perhaps want to become an entrepreneur and create a conscious business, a business that's in alignment with their purpose, or maybe they already have a business and really want to take it to the next level. So what would you say, like, how can someone really create a sustainable business that's prosperous and really have it move forward and create a global impact?
Firstly, the operating presumption has to be that you are not alone, you're not doing it alone, that the change you affect is not yours and you don't own it. A lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups, even high growth companies make a fatal mistake. And I say this on the strength of 20 years in the advertising world in Australia, London, and the US, as a writer on Nike for 4 years at Wyden & Kennedy, their ad agency, and having run global accounts like Motorola. So I share that just as context for where my opinion comes from. A lot of brands make the mistake, even when they're being purposeful, of talking in a self-directed way. What do I mean? If you look at a foundation may say, the blah blah foundation was founded in 1964, and since then we've got after-school meals to this number of kids, etc., etc. That is one way to approach it, but really, ultimately, there you're talking about yourself. You're telling people what you did, as opposed to saying, too many kids go to sleep every night. Go to sleep hungry every night. At Company X, we believe that has to stop, which is why through our partnership with X, Y, and Z, we've helped this many meals reach this many kids. It's a totally different come from. So when it comes to how you actually affect change in the world and mobilize a movement, you have to get off yourself and onto all of your stakeholders. And the way we like to express that is you need to shift from being the chief celebrity of your community to being its chief celebrant. Look at the people in your leadership team as people you want to celebrate. Look at your employees, the people that show up and invest that sweat equity every day, as people you want to celebrate. Look at the customers and consumers that buy your products. Celebrate them, and always be outward facing rather than self-directed. That is the number one largest, most fundamental mistake even purposeful companies make. And they're left sitting there going, wait, we're doing all the right things. We've done all these different tactics and initiatives. We're telling everyone about it. No one's engaging, and we don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's because you're still talking about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like being in a relationship with someone who does a lot of good things, but all they ever do is tell you about all the great things they're doing.
Yeah.
And so suddenly you don't engage. They still come off as self-interested or conceited. And that's equally true of brands.
Yeah, definitely. And so what has been your experience working with these different organizations like Tom's and Richard Branson and whatnot, but specifically Tom's? Was there, when you went in and you did the purposeful work, did you see an increase obviously in the bottom line of the company overall? Does it make an impact from that standpoint?
A couple of comments about Tom's. We were very privileged enough to be invited in to do some work with them for the last couple of years around their broader message to the world. And Tom's is an amazing company led by an extraordinary founder that really carved out the legitimacy of the purposeful for-profit business space, this social enterprise, social entrepreneurship space. Blake wanted to then take it to the next level, not just outright, but because Bain Capital had become a 50% partner with the company. And so if chapter one of their story was charismatic founder builds a wonderful organization that proves out the profitability of it by leading with purpose because you engage millennials who are connected by social technologies. Part two, or chapter two of that story, is watching the same company with a private equity partner go public or take their success to a whole other level and to expand their portfolio of impact and contribution as well as products. And so, we came in and we played a role working with the great teams at Boston Consulting Group and Bain Capital and Tom's and then ourselves here at WeFirst. And we defined an overarching global positioning for them, which sits above one for one, which is their how, and it's for one another, for one comma another. And I want to explain why that's important, because what it demonstrates is the need to be very simple in your messaging and very accessible, because it's an expression that people can readily understand and it's relatable to them and relevant to them. Yet at the same time, it really is it represents compressed complexity in the sense that for one another means leadership can work for employees for one another. Employees in the US can work with other employees around the world for one another. The for-profit company can work with their non-profit giving partners for one another. The private sector can work for, the non-profit sector for one another. The way of being that the company owns in the world is for one another, which is such a powerful, big idea to own, and that's also an incredibly dimensional creative platform for them to launch campaigns, to launch products from. So in terms of driving a movement, I hope what you see in that sort of solution that we collaboratively came to was that you get off yourself and onto the others. It's about them. It's about being there for one another. You've got to have a very simple, innately shareable solution that speaks to all products, all stakeholders, all regions around the world, so that you can do a lot of product launches, a lot of tactical campaigns, a lot of catalogs, but every single one of them is ringing the same bell, reinforcing the same message. They're like chapters in a longer story arc. Why? Because the power of social technologies, these supercomputers, these smartphones in our pockets that are irradiating our vital organs as we speak every day, is that it's not the power of one to everybody else, it's the power of one to many. It empowers me to tell my friends and my network about your brand. Yeah. And so you want to arm all of these people who are in your community who don't have a job title called marketer to tell a simple story that their audience, their network, their peers can understand and inspire them to take interest in your company, in your products and your services. So basically you're transforming your customer community into an extension of your marketing department. And when you do that well, that's when a company takes on a life of its own. And, Tom's is enjoying renewed success and, deservedly so. They're an extraordinary team.
It's amazing. Well, yeah, you look at some of these bigger conscious companies like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, and there's just a huge movement, and it just goes to show you can take care of people and planet and still create an abundance of profits in a company.
You can. I do think that, well, firstly, I want to make a comment, which is, I don't think we're learning or doing anything new here.
Thank you for saying that.
I'm
with you on that.
I think we're just remembering what we forgot.
Yeah.
Which is, we've got to relate to each other in a way that brings out the best in people.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
And we need to treat each other with respect. And I think what happened was, over time, we became drunk on the power of media. When doctors are selling cigarettes, and then suddenly, through television, print and radio, because it was a monologue, because you couldn't talk back, because you didn't have access to the web to find out whether something was true or not, you believed what you were told. And we were told what was cool, what to buy, what to wear, where to go. And then what happened is the web, social media, and smartphones came along and said, actually, this is what's really going on. Here's the information. Oh, you can share it with everyone in real time through social media. And you know what? Even when you're walking around, you've got that information in your pocket. In which case, everybody kind of called BS on a lot of what they were being told. And that's imposed radical transparency on all of these different companies. And as a result, we're peeling back these disingenuous layers. We're peeling back, opening the door of the corporate boardroom, peeling back, the curtain behind, PR. We're looking at where products come from, how they're made. We're looking behind the product brand to the company. We're looking behind the company to the supplier. And so what you're seeing now is peeling back all these layers that have been built up over time, as a function of this exclusive stranglehold that companies and others had on media, and consumers are becoming empowered. And so I believe now that it's not just a new day and it's exciting and it's purposeful and it's positive. I believe that we're kind of returning to the original intent of business, which was to add value to people's lives. Yes. And to create workplaces that are meaningful and rewarding and fulfilling to individuals. And all of that is ultimately selfish. Every single one of us as human beings want fulfillment and meaning in our lives. How could we not? And every single company should want the best out of their employees in terms of satisfaction, retention, and productivity. And every single consumer out there wants to buy a product that they like, that enriches their lives, and that inspires them to talk about it to somebody else. This is not rocket science. We're just getting out of our own way and aligning around what makes us special as a species, that we're sentient beings that are conscious of our own existence and that we're looking for greater meaning in our lives. And so, you know, the conscious capitalism movement, which is extraordinary, and the broader shift around purpose in business is an awakening to our innate nature and the relatedness that we should have with each other, rather than sort of some revelation of something new.
Yeah, I think it's more like we're just becoming more aware and conscious and accepting of being vulnerable, for instance.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable, being authentic, because it takes something to be vulnerable and authentic and transparent, because it takes courage.
It does take courage, but what is nice about this whole movement is that we didn't suddenly wake up and get courageous. It's kind of been thrust on us.
Yeah.
Corporations have had this difficult time over the last decade where people have come along and said, that's not true. And CEO, that behavior is not okay. And oh, by the way, you're making that product in a way that's not responsible, and what you're saying in your marketing doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And so we're being vulnerable and more revealing and more transparent, partly because some of us always wanted to be that way, but we hadn't been given permission before. The marketplace didn't reward that. And half the time it's happening because people are getting their derrieres handed to them. And so I think it's happening whether you like it or you don't like it. And I think it's really, really healthy for the marketplace. And it's a really exciting time to be an entrepreneur, because you can forego all this disingenuous and dishonest and deceptive behavior and speak to your truth and manifest that out in the world in a way that you'll find rewarding, but you're actually offering real value to people. Staggering proposition, but you know, it's very powerful.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So what's your vision for the world? I mean, you're a global leader. You're making a huge impact in the communities. What's your vision for the world inside of, you know, what you're up to and what you see as possible for the future of this planet?
Well, I was inspired to write the book because as an ad guy of 20 years who'd seen, you know, when you work on things like the Olympics and the World Cup for Nike, or you run global accounts like Motorola, the idea of creating or being a part of creating large-scale movements doesn't scare you. So I went in with that at least. But then what really struck me was I wasn't enamored with social media. I just noticed back in early 2007, I thought, wait a second. If you put media in the hands of citizens and consumers, it's going to change everything, because a dialogue is going to be possible. We can't get away with everything we've got away with. And this was, you know, this was before President Obama had been elected for his first term. This was before Occupy Wall Street and Arab Spring Revolution and Pepsi Refresh. And so the real great promise that I identified then that has really played out in such extraordinary ways is the ability to shift the balance of power to consumers and citizens, and on the strength of that, really re-engineer the way we do business to account for the interests of all stakeholders, which includes suppliers, employees, leadership, customers, consumers, and those out in the world. And my larger vision, and in the book I lay out this idea of a global brand initiative, which was all these brands working together to make a difference, has now really manifested itself in so many different ways, from whether it's the collaborations at the World Economic Forum, Clinton Global Initiative, the Better Cotton Initiative, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, all of these different ways that companies and government and non-profit agencies are all working together based on shared values and a common purpose. And I'm working on a new book right now about what is the future role of business. And I've got to say, 2015 was such an extraordinary year. It really was a line in the sand for business. If you think about over 200 companies coming together and signing the Paris Climate Agreement. They haven't acted on it sufficiently yet, but the intent, the public declaration was there. And then you also had the launch of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This is an extraordinary coincidence of intent that really does reframe the role of, or the narrative around the role of business in society. And so what I'm focused on in terms of the role of business, and by extension, corporations, social enterprises, new philanthropy, for-profit models of philanthropy, is where are we going to go next?
Yes.
What is the role of business in the world once we've had this awakening, once we have this connectivity, when we have this enhanced humanity playing a role in defining how we show up every day in the world. And so I'm writing a book about that. We're creating online courses about that because we want to be able to scale the insights that we have from all the work that we do with different brands and really arm entrepreneurs with that information. And I want to make one more comment about entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Entrepreneurs are sometimes misperceived as the lesser cousins of large corporations, perhaps because they don't have the resources or success in financial terms or whatever it might be. There is a huge shift in power going on where you see corporations trying to become flatter, become more fractured, become more nimble, because the marketplace is rewarding that. The pace of change is so accelerated. At the same time, you've got entrepreneurs with technology at their fingertips, which has lowered the barriers to entry, which have given them the opportunity to reach people at a scale they never even imagined before. So they're almost becoming like corporations. They've got to kind of take on the behaviors and the practices and the systems and the strategies that were previously reserved for corporations because they were the only ones that had that scale of footprint.
Yeah.
So I'm very passionate about arming entrepreneurs with the insights, the hard-won learnings of the world's smartest corporations and map those across to entrepreneurs so that when they get to scale, when they have the capacity to reach those people, they know what strategies and tactics to use, because we all know as entrepreneurs, you're sitting there going, is there paper in the photocopy machine? You know, can I meet payroll?
Yeah.
Who do I hire? How do I balance outsourcing and bringing people in-house? Can I get some sleep? Is it okay to cry in front of my employees? So, you know, I really want to equip them because I believe they really are the architects of change in the future. And there's so many dimensions to operations, supply chains and all of that, but storytelling is so, so important because it doesn't matter how good your product or service is. If you can't take it to market, you're never going to have the scale of impact you want. So that's our area of focus.
That's amazing. So yeah, this is so exciting. You know, you're doing so much in the world. What do you see? I know you've got, you know, you're working with entrepreneurs, but what do you see the next 5-10 years for yourself inside of what you're creating?
You know, firstly, it's nice to be able to play a role, but I see myself as hopefully a loud voice in a choir of change. None of this is happening without the support of other entrepreneurs and like-minded people like Raj, like the Conscious Capitalism Movement and John Mackey and others. We are all inspired by each other. Scott Harrison at Charity Water and Blake at Tom's and so many others, Richard at, you know, at Virgin and Virgin Unite. So it's never about me, it's about all of us working together.
Yeah.
That's very important. I mean, the name of my company is called We First, as an antidote to the me first mentality that really defined our limiting practice of business that led to the global economic meltdown in 2007 and 2008. So I believe that wholeheartedly. But above and beyond that, the role I really see is that it's twofold. To help corporations learn how to work together and have an impact and exercise their responsibility in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals in a way that they really can be servant leaders and look at the world in an inclusive, collaborative way instead of going, well, who's going to own the credit?
Yeah.
This is my change. Because there's a real tension between the healthy competitive instinct they have and the collaborative instinct they need to have in terms of collective well-being. And secondly, our ambition is to really arm entrepreneurs with the best practices of the business world outright, and the way for us to do that is to scale our impact through books, through doing the online courses, and to really, you know, do events. We've just done an event with Conscious Capitalism in LA and really reached a lot of fantastic folks here who are doing meaningful work. And this is a full contact sport. It's like we all do whatever we have to do to get it done. We need it now. The time is up. We can't speak to it. We can't pay lip service to it. We need measurable impact for which we're accountable. And the conversation has matured. It's very sophisticated. The practices, the tools are there. So we all need to go like hell.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do you go in a company and do you do like training with these corporations? Sure. Like how do you work with people?
We work with people in three broad ways. Firstly, we help them decide on what to say and how to say it. And that's a strategy solution. So what should a company like Tom's or a startup or anybody else say to the world? What's unique about them? How do they articulate it, especially like domain names, when everything's been said and everything's been taken? How do you find that simple, emotional language to share with people? And then secondly, we provide them with training, because one of the things is that is often overlooked is once you've articulated what your point of view is or the difference you want to make in the world, you need to share that internally with your community of internal stakeholders, your employees. Too often we rush to market only to find that when people deal with your company, they have a completely different experience, and then they get accused of greenwashing, cause washing, or whatever. Yeah. So we do workshops, we do webinars, we do employee advocacy toolkits, we do trainings of all type to get leadership buy-in, to get marketing across a very complex organization all on the same page, to socialize the point of view with the entire organization. And then thirdly, we help companies create the content to tell their story. We all know that we are pathologically OCD, ADD. We're all consuming content at the speed of, Snapchat and Instagram. I mean, it's ridiculous. So how do we distill down these complex ideas, this important and powerful messaging in a simple, consistent, and scalable way? And so we help companies create content. It might be a documentary for one company. It might be a series of Instagram stories for another company, but we help them create that. And importantly, we don't call that advertising because I think that's a loaded legacy term. We call it sort of content that drives conversation because...
That's awesome, I love that.
So because we believe brands need to lead cultural conversations now, not advertise at people to get them to buy a product. And so, whether it's strategy work, whether it's training, whether it's content, we blend those three different skill sets to help them really go to market with something unique that we know through the very real work that we've done for many years now inside leading corporations and startups around the world. We know what works and we point them in that direction so they can succeed too. Why? Because selfishly, we want them to be part of the solution. We want them to succeed. We're just a small little piece of that engine of success. But this little bit we know kind of well.
That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about the storytelling? Because the storytelling is so important. And, I actually just got to spend 7 days in Dhaka, Bangladesh with Dan Clark. Are you familiar with him?
Yes, yes.
He is a famous world-renowned storyteller. And so he shared the same thing. So it's interesting that I'm bringing these people in my vortex about storytelling and the power of it. Yeah. Because I think ever since, ancient times, mythology and all of these things, they told stories, right? In the Bible, Jesus told parables, stories for people to understand. So how do people really get into the heart of a story? Is there some strategy around that to be able to share?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that most people, quite understandably, are letting the tail wag the dog. They are looking at the web, they're looking at social media, they're looking at paid advertising on Facebook and Snapchat and everything else. And now everyone's got stories from Instagram to Snapchat to Facebook to Apple. Mm-hmm. And the challenge there is that you become consumed by looking at all the data and trying to back meaningful insights out of the data and then base your strategy on that. When in fact, I actually checked. Everyone who's watching this, I even checked you out. Everyone is still 100% qualified to be called a human being. And as human beings, the currency we trade, if we want to engage people, motivate people, inspire them to participate, is emotion. You've got to actually motivate people from an emotional point of view to engage, in which case you need a story. Yeah. We are still human beings sitting around a campfire telling stories. It's just that the delivery mechanisms have changed. And so as much as the marketplace is being driven by digital agencies or social media agencies or VR, AR, AI agencies, we are still human beings who need storytelling to inspire people to share word of mouth advertising, which is the most powerful to date still in terms of getting someone to do something or think in a different way. And so, it just so happened that my advertising career that took me around the world was all about storytelling. Mm-hmm. And when I looked at what technology was doing and when I looked at how business was changing, to me there seemed to be a huge oversight. There was the storytelling pieces missing. Because business had dehumanized the way we practice business. And technology outright has this arm's length intimacy involved in it. And it kind of, connects us, but in a different way. And so how do you leverage the true power of storytelling through these social technologies to motivate changes in thinking and behavior that will have a positive impact? So that's our sweet spot. And I think without it, you're going to get a lot of headiness in terms of how do we change our supply chain and how do we change our org structure and how do we talk to each other, give each other different job titles. But we've got to care about the same things. And that's why things like shared values and the conscious capitalism movement have really resonated, because it's talking in soft skill terms, in qualitative terms. And that's storytelling terms. And I think that's an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle.
That's amazing. I love that. It's so simple.
It's actually shockingly simple. And I sometimes wonder why all of us get away with talking so much about these things when they're so fundamentally human. And as with so many things in life, I don't think that the challenge is really, I think the problem is the solution. And in this case, we're the problem.
Yeah.
We need to get out of our own way
Yeah.
and get out of our heads a little bit and relate to each other in kind of human ways that are far more compelling. And that will drive the success of your business and drive your growth more effectively than anything else. Having spent 4 years as a writer on Nike, where you were charged with that with every piece of work you did, I know it in my bones to be true. What Nike does so well is not talk about their shoes. They do the best job of helping you understand that they truly understand what it is to be an athlete, the psychology of an athlete, what you go through. And as a result of that empathetic connection, you buy their product for the badge value of it.
Yeah.
You want to show up in the world in a way where that product says, I identify with that understanding.
Yes.
And that's what every single one of us has to do as a brand.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much
You're
for your
welcome.
time,
You're welcome.
for your passion, for your leadership, for everything
you.
that you're doing in the world.
Thank you.
Seriously, you're so inspiring. Make sure you get this book, read it. I'm definitely gonna take home a copy, so you're gonna have to autograph it
Took a long time
today.
to write. not much sleep for a long time.
Thank you so much. And then you're gonna give a free gift away as well. So can you share about that real quick?
I am. I mean, I so appreciate everyone's time. It's the one commodity that has more value every single day. And so we have created a We First Purpose Playbook, a We First Purpose Playbook. And this contains content that we've shared gratefully with the amazing folks at Virgin Unite, with Richard Branson on Necker Island, through to the folks at Tom's and working with Blake and his team, and the folks at Bain Capital. So this is a distillation of all the incredible insights that we've learned through our work, and we distill that down to make it accessible to other people. And so we want to give you some of those insights. So all you do is click the link below and you'll get that for free. And we really hope it's useful, because this is not about me, this is not about you, this is not about this platform, this is about all of us working together in a we first sense. And it's not just because it's admirable. We need it. There is no time to lose. This is the mandate. This is the opportunity of our generation as entrepreneurs and business people to really point it in the right direction, and not only drive our own business growth as a result, but to find true wealth, which is that fulfillment you want for yourself. So I hope it helps.
Enough said.
All right.
Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been amazing to share this time with you. Please stick around for the next experts that are coming your way. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.